All of dry shampoos, Unilever voluntarily pulling 19 products, concern about an elevated level of benzene,
which can cause cancer. The brands include Dove, Nexus, Suave, and TRESemmé.
You've pulled your own hair out of the shower drain and told yourself it was stress, you've brushed flakes off a dark shirt and bought a stronger shampoo. One of the companies on tonight's list put the word leukemia in its own recall notice. Europe banned an active ingredient that's still in the bottle Americans buy for dandruff. In 2012, the company behind tonight's #1 promised, in writing, to take a preservative out of its shampoos. 9 years later, it was still in there, and a woman named Larissa Whipple sued, saying it cost her and thousands of other people their hair. 8 bottles I'd take off your shelf tonight, and 4 I'd put back because I'm not going to spend half an hour scaring you and leave you standing in the aisle. Number 8, Head & Shoulders, owned by Procter & Gamble. The blue bottle, and the most medical-sounding phrase in the aisle, the #1 dermatologist recommended. You know the smell before I describe it, that sharp menthol tingle that feels like medicine doing its job? Here's what that phrase is, legally. A marketing claim built on surveys of doctors, not an approval, not a safety review, and no agency awarded it. The surveys ask which brand doctors recommend most, and the biggest brand wins the question it paid to ask. And the active ingredient in the classic American formula is zinc pyrithione, and in 2022, the European Union banned that ingredient from cosmetics entirely, after classifying it as a reproductive hazard in its most serious category. Europe didn't ban dandruff shampoo, it banned that ingredient, and the brand reformulated for European shelves. Same company, same blue bottle, one formula for Munich, and another for Milwaukee. The fair clause first, US regulators haven't banned it, and the two systems genuinely weigh evidence differently, but none of that is printed on the bottle, and the version Europe classified as a reproductive hazard is the one hitting American scalps every morning. Check yours tonight, the words zinc pyrithione, usually near the top of the list. Verdict: Head & Shoulders failed our 2 formulas test because trust that changes at a border isn't trust, it's geography. This is what we do every week. We pull the receipts on the products you actually buy, so subscribe if you want these files opened with you in the room. And the next brand's problem isn't a survey with a flattering answer. The company behind it is sitting in a federal courthouse in Chicago right now, and the file is more than 11,000 cases deep. Number 7, Garnier Fructis, owned by L'Oreal, one of the largest beauty companies on the planet. The green bottle, the fruit on the front, the promise of hair 10 times stronger, and a smell so loud it's practically a smoothie. For years, the ingredient list on bottles from that era carried something called DMDM hydantoin. You'll hear that name all night, so let's define it once and carefully. It's a preservative that doesn't contain formaldehyde. It releases it slowly, molecule by molecule, every time it touches water. And the World Health Organization's research agency classifies formaldehyde itself as a Group 1 human carcinogen, which is their category for the substances they're most certain about, the same bucket where they keep asbestos. The dose in a rinse-off shampoo is small, and nobody can tell you your bottle hurt you, but that's the ingredient, and it was sitting behind the fruit. Current Fructis bottles lists different preservatives, sodium benzoate, which is the boring kind. The ingredient went away quietly, no press release, no letter to a decade of customers, and today, the brand's own website advertises the absence, free of DMDM hydantoin, printed like a feature. The company that put it behind the fruit now markets the removal. Now, the part of the L'Oreal file nobody prints on a bottle. L'Oreal's American subsidiary is one of the main defendants in the federal hair relaxer litigation in Chicago. More than 11,000 cases pending as I record this, over chemical straighteners, not shampoo. The filings surged after the National Institutes of Health tracked nearly 34,000 women for 11 years and reported that frequent users of chemical straighteners were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer by age 70. The study never named a brand. The lawsuits do, and the first trials are expected next year. Every case is an allegation, and none of it is about the green bottle. But trust belongs to the company that fills the bottle, and that company's 2026 calendar is being written by court clerks. Run the check tonight. If there's an older green bottle in your shower, flip it. And if you see DMDM hydantoin on the back, you're holding tonight's story in one word. Verdict: Fructis failed our disclosure test because the story on the front never once mentioned the chemistry on the back. And it gets worse because the next brand planted an entire garden on top of the same chemistry, and then its owner had to pull cans off the shelves for something no label ever showed. Number 6. Herbal Essences, owned by Procter & Gamble. The classic line, the bottles a whole generation grew up smelling, carried DMDM hydantoin on the back for years. The same formaldehyde releaser we just defined, Then in 2017, the brand got a full makeover, a line called Renew, bottles that look like a botanical garden. It was built to catch the exact shopper who'd started reading labels and getting nervous. And that detail should bother you more than any single ingredient because it means the company understood the fear. The rebrand was the answer to it. So did the makeover clean up the chemistry? Not exactly. On the sulfate Renew bottles from that era, the preservatives on the back were methylchloroisothiazolinone and methylisothiazolinone, a lab-made pair criticized in dermatology literature as common contact allergens, the kind associated with itching, flaking, irritated skin in people who become sensitized. The front said nature, the back said chemistry. Both were printed by the same company at the same time on the same bottle. I'm not telling you Herbal essences injured anyone, and I'm not aware of any court that has. I'm telling you the marketing moved toward nature at the exact moment the label needed reading most, and that's a choice someone signed off on in a meeting with the formula sheet in the room. Then, December 17th of 2021. Procter & Gamble recalled its aerosol dry shampoos, herbal essences included, alongside Pantene, Aussie, and Waterless. The reason was benzene, not in the formula, but in the propellant, the gas that pushes the product out of the can. I don't have to characterize benzene for you. The company's own recall announcement did it. Exposure can result in cancers, including leukemia. Their words on the federal notice. P&G added that the levels it found wouldn't be expected to cause harm. You've now heard their clause hold the word benzene. It comes back tonight for an entire shelf. The tell for this one is a single word, fragrance. When a label says fragrance and nothing more, that's a legally protected trade secret, and you're not entitled to know what's inside it. Count how many of your bottles say it. Verdict: Herbal Essences failed our promise test. And 10 months after P&G pulled its cans, another company's cans followed, and the next entry exists entirely because of a recall. Number 5, the aerosol dry shampoos, Dove, TRESemmé, and Suave, an entire shelf that traces to one company, Unilever. In October 2022, Unilever recalled aerosol dry shampoos across those lines, and the reason was the word you were holding. There was benzene in the propellant, same contaminant, same hiding place, the second benzene recall of American shampoo cans inside 12 months. Benzene is another Group 1 human carcinogen on that same World Health Organization list, with a documented link to leukemia in occupational studies. That's not my framing, that's the recall category. Class action litigation followed, and here's where it stands. A settlement was proposed, $3.6 million, and in February of this year, a federal judge in Connecticut refused to even preliminarily approve it. Sit with that sequence. The recall was in 2022. It's 2026. The proposed settlement was thrown out, and no affected customer has been paid a cent. We have a rule for exactly this situation. A documented acute risk recall flags a product regardless of anything else on the label, because no scoring rubric can price that in. A recall notice is the one document a marketing department can't rewrite. Sit with the mechanics, because this is as gray as tonight gets. Dry shampoo is the product you spray directly onto your scalp in a closed bathroom standing inside the cloud you just made, and some people used it daily for years. The contamination wasn't the fragrance or the starch, it was the gas pushing them out of the can. Nobody chose it, nobody could have read a label and caught it, and the label was never going to save you here. Verdict: the aerosol lines failed on the acute risk override, full stop. If this kind of receipt is worth something to you, leave a like. It genuinely tells us to keep pulling them. Remember the promise from the top of the show, the one made on paper. We're 4 brands away, and when the countdown ends, 4 bottles that actually pass are waiting. The cheapest, about $13 at Target. But benzene wasn't Unilever's first expensive shampoo lesson. The first came in 2012, cost $10.2 million, and left a paper trail 3 quarts long. Number 4, Suave Professionals, Unilever, the budget bottle, the one families buy in bulk because $3 is $3. In 2012, Unilever sold a product called Suave Professionals Keratin Infusion, a 30-day smoothing treatment marketed as formaldehyde-free. It was recalled that same year after complaints of hair loss and scalp burns. Hold that phrase, hair loss and scalp burns, because you'll hear it twice more tonight, and the next time it comes with a name and a face. And according to the class action that followed, the product contained DMDM hydantoin the whole time. Formaldehyde-free on the front, a formaldehyde releaser on the back. That case ended in a $10.2 million settlement, and when the settlement was challenged, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld it in 2016. I'll say the required words: a settlement is not an admission of guilt, but an appeals court doesn't spend ink on nothing, and the money was real. Here's why this matters beyond one discontinued treatment. That recall means Unilever has known since 2012, in the most expensive way a company can learn anything, exactly what consumers allege this preservative does on a scalp. The tell for the budget aisle is simple. Cheap doesn't have to mean undisclosed. Verdict: Suave failed our honesty test on a recall, a settlement, and an appellate opinion. More paperwork than any $3 product I've ever covered. And the reason you're still holding that 2012 date is that 8 years later, the same corporation was in federal court, again, over the same ingredient in a different bottle. Number 3, TRESemmé Keratin Smooth, also Unilever, the black bottle that promises salon results at supermarket prices. In November 2020, a 22-year-old named Emily Castillo filed a federal class action in the Northern District of Illinois, and her complaint reads like a diary. She bought the shampoo and conditioner from Target for about $9, used them exactly as directed, and says her hair started falling out within the first few uses. She describes a burning sensation, a scalp that turned red and dry, itching, and heat that would persist for up to 7 hours after washing. 2 weeks in, she threw the bottles away, and her symptoms faded. Those are allegations. The case is a legal claim and not a verdict, but the complaint doesn't stop with her. Her lawyers did something I respect. They collected the reviews, already sitting in public, and entered them into the federal record, so these next lines aren't mine, they're quoted from the filing. My hair was coming out in chunks, sores on my scalp, itchy enough to wake me up in the middle of the night, clumps in my hand, clogged my shower 3 times. I literally have a big, bald spot in the middle of my head. That's the language real customers used about a bottle that says smooth on the front. And paragraph 71 of that complaint alleges Unilever had been receiving complaints like these since at least 2013, 7 years before Emily Castillo ever reached that shelf in Algonquin, Illinois. Now the mechanism, because you should understand what's alleged. A formaldehyde releaser doesn't burn like acid, it works slowly and quietly. Wet hair, warm water, a preservative engineered to leach formaldehyde bit by bit to keep bacteria out of the bottle. The allegation is that on some scalps, this triggers contact dermatitis, inflammation right at the follicle, and an inflamed follicle can push a hair into its shedding phase early, which is why the stories all sound the same. The drain, the brush, the pillow, not everyone, not every wash, and that's exactly why it took class actions to surface the pattern. TRESemmé reformulated Keratin Smooth in 2022 after the lawsuit was filed, not before. Which bottle is in your shower right now? Tell me the brand in the comments. I read them, and I'll pull the files on the ones that keep coming up. Verdict: Keratin Smooth failed our safety record test and our honesty test. If you've made it this deep, you already know this isn't a channel that yells, it's a channel that reads filings, so subscribe if you want the next set read to you, because the last 2 entries are the heavyweights. Number 2 is the best-selling shampoo in America, and number 1 is the written promise, the one a federal lawsuit read back out loud 9 years later. Number 2, Pantene Pro Fev, Procter & Gamble, and by most industry counts, the best-selling shampoo brand in the country, the bottle in hotel bathrooms and hospital gift shops, the one probably in a house you grew up in. That reach is the point of this segment because trust at that scale is a kind of infrastructure, and people stopped reading the label generations ago. The variant worth your attention is Daily Moisture Renewal, and on bottles from the era we can document, the preservative on the back was DMDM hydantoin. Now read the front of that same bottle. It's marketed for dry, damaged hair, sold to the very customer who's already anxious about what she's seeing in the brush. Think about who reaches for a bottle with Renewal in the name, someone for whom something is already going wrong. And the 2026 bottle. The formaldehyde releaser is gone, and the preservative pair on today's ingredient list is methylchlorothiazolinone and methylisothiazolinone, the same contact allergen pair you met at number 6. The chemistry changed, the pattern didn't. Pantene's name has already been spoken once tonight. Its aerosol dry shampoos were on that December 2021 benzene recall, the same federal notice that named Herbal essences. So the bestseller already lived the same propellant problem as the shelf at number 5. That's the part I can't get past, the targeting. Not a defect, a decision about who the customer is. P&G employs some of the best cosmetic chemists on earth. They know precisely what every preservative is and what it does, and they printed Renewal on the front anyway. No court has ruled against Pantene on this, and I'm not telling you it injured anyone. I'm telling you what sat on the 2 sides of one bottle at the same time, a formaldehyde releaser on the back and a promise of Renewal on the front aimed at women watching their hair thin. The tell here is the marketing category itself. Any product aimed at thinning or damaged hair earns a harder look at its back label, never a softer one. Verdict: Pantene failed our audience test. One name left, and it's the only company tonight that put its intentions in writing twice 9 years apart. Number 1, OGX. The coconut bottles, the biotin, and collagen bottles, the fastest growing shampoo story of the 2000s and 10s. In August 2012, in response to a public campaign, Johnson & Johnson committed in writing to remove formaldehyde-releasing preservatives from its personal care products by 2015 and from baby products even sooner. That pledge was reported around the world as a turning point for the entire industry, proof the biggest name in the aisle could simply decide to do better. Hold the date, 2015. The company chose it, nobody imposed it. Now, the twist the court file untangles, OGX wasn't a Johnson & Johnson brand when that promise was made. It belonged to a company called Vogue International, and Johnson & Johnson bought it in 2016, a full year after its own cleanup deadline had come and gone. So the company that told the world it was done with formaldehyde releasers went out and bought a line, still running one, and kept selling it, coconuts on the front, for 5 more years. On June 7th of 2021, Larissa Whipple filed that class action in the Northern District of Illinois. Paragraph 2 alleges significant hair loss and scalp irritation. Paragraph 69 says the company already knew about hundreds, if not thousands, of online complaints of hair loss and breakage. The same drain, the same brush, the same story you've heard all night. And her lawyers made the argument this whole episode has been building toward, that the 2012 promise wasn't an old press release. It was the company's own written standard, and OGX sat below it for years while the company that made the promise cashed the register. That's an allegation, and the case never got a verdict. What happened instead happened fast. In September 2021, the company announced it would stop manufacturing OGX products with the ingredient. In March 2022, the case was quietly dismissed after settlement talks, with prejudice, which means it can never be refiled, and the terms, if there were any, were never made public. A settlement is not an admission of guilt, and no court ever ruled on these claims. But the timeline isn't sealed. It's the public record, and you've just heard all of it. One more layer, because keeping corporate entities straight matters here. The division that owned OGX through all of this was spun off in 2023 into a company called Kenvue. And as I record this, Kenvue is being folded into Kimberly-Clark, the Kleenex company, in a deal worth near $49 billion expected to close this year. The names on the letterhead keep changing. The coconut bottles stay right where they've always been, at eye level. Run it back because it took 9 years and fits in one breath. A written promise in 2012, a deadline of 2015. The brand bought in 2016. The ingredient still in the bottles in 2021, sued in June. Reformulation announced in September. Case quietly closed by March, terms never public. At no point in those 9 years did the front of the bottle change its story. The coconut stayed, the word nourishing stayed, thick and full stayed. The receipt was on the back the entire time. One chemical name in 7-point type, and the women who filed suit say they paid for that gap with the hair in their drains. Verdict: OGX failed every test we run except one. The back label was accurate, it's the promise that wasn't. 8 bottles tonight, 4 companies, 1 aisle. And before the winners, here's the question that matters most, because under the most watched videos on this subject, the most liked comment asks the same thing every time. Why is this stuff still on the shelves? Here's the answer, and it's worse than a cover-up. It's legal. The FDA doesn't approve cosmetics before they're sold. That's not how the system works, and it never has been. Until a law called MoCRE passed at the end of 2022. The agency couldn't even order a mandatory cosmetic recall. It could only ask nicely. And the word fragrance is still a legally protected trade secret on every label in the aisle tonight in 2026. So the safety net you probably assumed exists, someone checking the bottle before it reaches your shower, mostly doesn't. What exists is the back label, litigation after the fact, and people willing to read both. That's the whole reason the second half of this list matters, because 4 brands passed the same tests, the first 8 failed, and the best of them costs about the same as the bottles that ended up in court. Winner number 4, Odele. 3 women founded it. It sells for about $12 at Target, Walmart, and CVS. And its record is clean, no recalls, no lawsuits, nothing. And I mean, I checked. There's a page floating around the internet with the words Odele lawsuit in the title, and when you pull the thread, there's no docket, no court, no case, anywhere. It's a junk page wearing a legal headline, lawsuits as search bait, which tells you something about the fear in this aisle. The company preserves with sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate, the boring, well-understood kind of chemistry, and there's no formaldehyde releaser anywhere in the line. 2 honest clauses before the praise. The label still says fragrance without itemizing it, so Odele doesn't fix the trade secret loophole. A winner further down this list does, and the founders sold a minority stake to an outside investment firm, so it's not 100% founder-owned anymore. Now, the systemic win, and it's the best news of the night. Every brand we flagged tonight for a formaldehyde releaser has quietly dropped it as of 2026. Every single one. The lawsuits, the label readers, people like you watching things like this, that pressure moved an entire aisle, and nobody sent out a press release about that either. Your label tells sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate, sitting where DMDM hydantoin used to be. Winner number 3, Briogeo, be gentle, be kind. Founded by Nancy Twine, who left a Wall Street career to build it from her grandmother's kitchen recipes and became one of the youngest black women ever to launch a brand at that scale in national retail. The formulas print their exclusions plainly. No sulfates, no silicones, no formaldehyde releasers, named chemistry, not vibes. Honest clauses, plural, because this one has 3. It runs about $42. It stopped being independent in 2022 when Wella acquired it, and Wella itself now belongs to the private equity firm KKR, and Twine stepped back from the CEO seat in 2025. But the label practice survived every one of those changes, and the label practice is what you're actually buying. Your Tell, a free of list that names actual preservative classes instead of soft words like clean and pure. Anyone can print pure. Naming the chemistry you refuse takes a formula that can survive the question. Winner number 2, Pros. It's a custom formula service, about $34 a bottle, and the honest clause is that it's subscription first and happy to upsell you. Here's why it's on this list anyway. Pros discloses every ingredient in your specific formula, including the individual fragrance components, which is the exact category the trade secret loophole lets everyone else hide. That's the single rarest act of transparency in this industry, and it answers the herbal essences problem directly. No mystery word, the whole recipe. The win moment is that a working company just proved full disclosure is possible at shampoo prices, which quietly shames every fragrance line on every label you own. Your Tell travels anywhere. If a brand will show you the complete formula when asked, it's earned the benefit of the doubt. If it points you to the word fragrance, it hasn't.
And winner number 1, Vanicream Gentle Shampoo, about $13 at Target, Walmart, and CVS, made by an independent, privately owned company. And if the name feels new, the formula isn't. It's sold as Free and Clear until a 2021 rebrand, and I couldn't find a recall anywhere in its history. No fragrance, no dye, no formaldehyde releasers, an ingredient list you can read aloud in about 10 seconds, and it's the bottle dermatologists reach for when a patient's scalp is already inflamed. The honest clause? It's boring. No coconuts, no botanicals, no story at all. And that is precisely the win. This is what a shampoo looks like when the front of the bottle has nothing to hide. The back label basically is the front label.
And here's the callback. It costs about what the bottles that ended up in federal court cost, so the honest option isn't the expensive one, which almost never happens. If this list saves you one bad bottle, leaving a like is the 10-second way to say so. Your Tell, count the ingredients. Short lists have short stories. Run the 8 back in one breath, Head and Shoulders, Garnier Fructis, Herbal Essences, the Dove, TRESemmé, and Suave cans. Suave Keratin Infusion, TRESemmé Keratin Smooth, Pantene, OGX. Every verdict tonight came off a label or out of a court file, nowhere else. So here's the portable rule. Same shape as every week, 10 seconds in the aisle, flip the bottle, look for DMDM hydantoin by name, and look for the word fragrance standing alone. That's the whole test. Nobody can market past it. Send this one to the person whose shower you've seen, the one with the black bottle or the coconut bottle, because they're never gonna read a federal complaint, but they'll watch this. And subscribe if you want next week's files opened with you in the room.